Maybe if your father had a real job, you wouldn't need free lunch. Before that sentence settles, tell me this. Where in the world are you watching from? And what time is it where you are right now? Because somewhere, at this very hour, a parent is walking into a school believing they are only there for one small reason, unaware that the first words they hear will reveal something much larger than they ever expected. Marcus Reed had come to Roosevelt Elementary with a blue sweater folded over one arm. Nothing more. Lily had left it in the back seat of his pickup that morning, tucked beside her spelling folder and the little purple lunch napkin she always forgot to use. The weather had turned cold after breakfast, barely 50 degrees by noon, and Marcus knew his daughter too well. Lily would sit through an entire afternoon with goosebumps on her arms before she raised her hand and asked a teacher to call him. She had her mother's quietness that way, a softness that made her endure discomfort rather than risk becoming a bother. So Marcus used half of his lunch break, signed in at the front office, clipped the visitor sticker to his work jacket, and followed the low rumble of voices toward the cafeteria. The place hit him all at once. Red plastic trays sliding across metal rails, milk cartons thudding on tables, sneakers squeaking under benches, the tired buzz of fluorescent lights hanging above rows of children trying to eat before the bell. Then, slowly, the noise thinned. Not completely. Children rarely went silent all at once. But conversations shrank. Forks paused. A few heads turned toward the lunch counter and stayed there. Marcus saw Lily standing near the register, both hands gripping the edges of her tray. Her chicken patty, mashed potatoes, green beans, and milk sat untouched beneath the cafeteria lights. Across from her stood Mrs. Harlan, the cafeteria supervisor, silver blonde hair pinned neatly, name tag straight, clipboard held against her chest like a shield. Her voice was not loud. That was what made it worse. It was polished, careful, almost polite, the kind of coldness that could later pretend it had only been doing its job. Your account is still marked unpaid, Lily, Mrs. Harlan said. We cannot keep serving hot meals when families do not complete their responsibilities. Lily's chin dipped. A boy at the nearest table looked down into his applesauce. Someone whispered, then stopped. Marcus felt the blue sweater tighten in his hand. He had heard rude words before. He had survived rooms where men in better suits spoke to him like he was furniture. But the look on Lily's face was different. Shame had made his little girl smaller in front of everyone, and that hurt more than the sentence itself. He did not rush forward. He did not raise his voice. He took one slow breath and crossed the polished floor with the sweater still folded over his arm. As he came closer, Mrs. Harlan glanced at his dusty boots, his plain work jacket, the visitor sticker curling at one edge, and something in her expression settled into certainty. Marcus noticed the clipboard then. Not just Lily's name, but several names beneath hers, marked with small colored symbols he had seen once before in a file he had not yet discussed with anyone at this school. His eyes moved from the list to Mrs. Harlan's name tag, and a quiet recognition passed through him. This was not just a mistake. Not if that file was right. Lily finally saw him, and her eyes widened with the fear every father dreads. Not fear of being hungry, but fear that he had heard her being humiliated. Marcus stepped beside her, unfolded the blue sweater, and placed it gently over her shoulders. Only then did he look at Mrs. Harlan. "Ma'am," he said, his voice calm enough to make the room lean in. "Before this child takes another breath feeling ashamed, you are going to explain why being hungry became something you thought she deserved to answer for." Mrs. Harlan did not answer right away. Her fingers tightened around the clipboard, and the cafeteria seemed to hold its breath around her silence. Marcus kept one hand lightly on Lily's shoulder, feeling how small she was beneath the blue sweater, how hard she was trying not to tremble. That morning, before the sun had cleared the roofs along Maple Street, he had stood in their narrow kitchen making pancakes that browned a little too much at the edges. Lily liked them that way but would never admit it, so he always slid the darkest one onto her plate and pretended not to notice when she smiled. Her backpack sat open on the chair beside her, spelling folder inside, library book tucked crookedly, the blue sweater folded neatly on top because the forecast said the temperature would drop before recess. Marcus had packed everything the way he always did, with the careful attention of a father who had learned that love was often hidden in small routines. Since Lily's mother passed 3 years earlier, mornings had become their quiet agreement with the world. He would make breakfast, She would read the cereal box like it held breaking news, and neither of them would say out loud how much they missed the voice that used to sing while coffee brewed. But that morning, Lily had not read anything. She had pushed a piece of pancake through syrup and kept her eyes on the table. "Daddy," she asked finally, "do my friends know I get lunch help?" Marcus had paused with one hand on the sink. "Why are you asking me that?" Lily shrugged, but her cheeks had already answered. "Some kids said there is a list. They said if your name is on it, everybody knows your family cannot pay." Marcus dried his hands slowly and sat across from her. He was still in his work pants, still smelling faintly of soap, sawdust, and the black coffee he never finished. "Look at me, baby." She did. There is nothing shameful about a child eating lunch at school. Not one thing. Food is not a prize for rich children. It is not a test. It is not something you earn by having the right last name or the right kind of house. Lily's eyes searched his face. "But what if they laugh?" "Then the laughing is wrong," he said. "Not you." She nodded, but the worry stayed with her, sitting behind her eyes like a cloud that would not move. An hour later, after he dropped her at school, his phone rang as he was turning out of the parking lot. The screen showed Mrs. Evelyn Carter. Her voice came through calm and low. "Marcus, we have received more complaints about the public meal status practices at Roosevelt." He looked back at the brick school building, at children moving through the front doors with backpacks bouncing against their shoulders. "How many?" he asked. "Enough that I am worried," she said. "Names visible. Children being separated. Parents saying approved applications are still being treated as pending." Marcus watched Lily disappear inside with the blue sweater still folded in her backpack. "Not yet," he said. "I want to see how the system treats one child when nobody knows who is watching." Now, standing in that cafeteria, he understood the answer had found him faster than he expected. Mrs. Harlan lifted her chin, recovering the safety of her official tone. "Mr. Reed, I understand you are upset, but this is procedure. If an account is not cleared, we cannot simply ignore it." Marcus looked at Lily's untouched tray, then at the children pretending not to listen. His voice remained quiet. "A procedure can correct a record," he said. "It does not get to turn my daughter into a burden." Mrs. Harlan's face tightened at the word burden, but Marcus did not look away. He had said it for Lily, but he had also said it for every child whose name might have been turned into a quiet warning on somebody's clipboard. Lily stood beside him with the blue sweater wrapped around her shoulders, her hands folded against her stomach, her tray still waiting on the metal counter. She was not crying. That was what made Marcus ache. Tears would have told him she still believed the room might comfort her. This silence meant she had already learned how to survive embarrassment by going still. The last few weeks began arranging themselves in his mind with painful clarity. The mornings when Lily said she was not hungry, then watched him pack her backpack as if she were waiting for a question she hoped he would not ask. The yellow notice he found folded so small inside the pocket of her jeans that it looked like she had tried to make it disappear. The apple that came home nearly whole 3 days in a row, 2 tiny bites turning brown around the edges. The afternoon she asked if he could pack her lunch from home, then the next morning said he did not have to because she knew groceries cost money. At the time, Marcus had held the lunch bag in one hand and looked at his daughter standing in the kitchen doorway, trying to protect him from a problem she should never have been carrying. He had wanted to kneel right there and tell her no child needed to make herself cheaper to love. Instead, he packed the sandwich anyway, added grapes, crackers, and a note that said, "You are never too much." But even then, he knew a packed lunch was only a bandage. It did not answer why a school system had made an 8-year-old afraid of a cafeteria. A week earlier, he had walked through the front office after asking about the yellow notice. That was when he saw the board near the copier. Red, yellow, and green marks lined beside student names, visible from the hallway where parents signed in and children waited for late passes. Lily Reed had been marked yellow, pending. So had other names from her class, children whose birthday cupcakes he had seen in newsletters, children who sat beside Lily at assemblies, children who should have been known for drawings and spelling tests and missing front teeth, not meal status colors pinned to a wall. Marcus had stood there long enough to understand the cruelty of it. Not loud cruelty. Not the kind people apologized for quickly. The ordinary kind. The kind that called itself organization, while children learned which names made adults lower their voices. Now, in the cafeteria, Miss Alvarez rose halfway from a table near the wall. She was Lily's teacher, young but steady, with tired eyes that softened whenever she spoke to her students. For a second, Marcus thought she would come forward. Then an older staff member beside her touched her elbow, a small warning wrapped in a friendly gesture. Miss Alvarez froze, torn between her student and the machine she worked inside. Marcus did not blame her. Fear did not always look like cowardice. Sometimes it looked like a good person calculating how much truth their job could survive. Mrs. Harlan glanced toward the teacher, then back at Marcus. Mr. Reed, your daughter may wait in the office until this is resolved. Lily's shoulders curled inward. Marcus saw it and felt something firm settle in him. Not rage. Decision. He took the tray from the counter and placed it on the table in front of Lily, careful and gentle, as though restoring something sacred. Then he pulled out the chair beside her. Sit down, baby. Lily looked at him, uncertain. Daddy, I do not want to make trouble. His heart almost broke at that. He crouched until his eyes were level with hers. Being hungry is not trouble, he said. Being embarrassed for it is the trouble. She sat slowly. Marcus stood beside her, calm, steady, impossible to move. Across from him, Mrs. Harlan had no clipboard high enough to hide behind now. The cafeteria had seen what she had done, and for the first time that afternoon, she had to stand inside the silence she created. Mrs. Harlan stood very still, the clipboard pressed against her chest, while Lily stared at the tray in front of her as if permission to eat had become something fragile. Marcus pulled the chair out a little farther and waited until his daughter lifted her fork. She took one small bite, then another. Only then did he turn back to Mrs. Harlan. Her account is pending, Mrs. Harlan said, softer now, but still clinging to the word as if it could carry the whole weight of what had happened. The rules are clear. Then we will talk about the rules, Marcus said. But first we will talk about why those rules needed to be spoken through my daughter's shame. The cafeteria doors opened before she could answer. Principal Warren came in with his office walk, quick enough to show urgency, measured enough to look controlled. He was a tall man in his early 50s, wearing a navy tie with small gold eagles printed across it, and his eyes moved through the room like he was counting damage. First the children, then the staff, then the two students at the back table holding their phones too low to be casual. Only after that did he look at Lily. Marcus noticed the order. A man worried about a child looked at the child first. A man worried about a report looked for witnesses. Mr. Reed, Principal Warren said, already smoothing his voice into something official, I understand there has been a disruption. Marcus kept his hand resting lightly on the back of Lily's chair. There has been a child embarrassed in front of her classmates. Principal Warren glanced toward Mrs. Harlan, who lifted the clipboard slightly. Her meal account shows pending verification. I was following cafeteria policy. She did not sound cruel. That almost made it worse. She sounded practiced, like someone who had repeated a sentence so many times she no longer heard the child standing inside it. Principal Warren nodded too quickly. Then this may be a misunderstanding about procedure. Marcus looked at him. Does your procedure include commenting on whether a parent has a real job? The principal's expression tightened. A few children looked up from their trays. One milk carton rolled slowly near the end of a table and stopped against a sneaker. I am sure no offense was intended, Principal Warren said. Offense was received by an 8-year-old, Marcus replied. That should matter more than intent. Near the wall, Miss Alvarez stood up. Her hands were clasped in front of her, and her voice came out careful but clear. Principal Warren, Lily has been marked pending for 3 weeks. Her father came to the office about it. I remember because Lily stopped eating in the cafeteria the same week. Mrs. Harlan turned sharply. Miss Alvarez, this is not your department. The teacher swallowed, but she did not sit down. She is my student. The room shifted around those 4 words. Marcus felt Lily pause beside him, fork halfway to her mouth. Principal Warren's eyes flicked toward the cafeteria exit, then toward Mr. Bell, the school security officer standing near the side door. It was brief, almost nothing, but Marcus saw it. He had seen that glance in court offices, housing meetings, hospital waiting rooms, and school halls. It was the moment a man asking for dignity began to be recast as a problem requiring control. Mr. Reed, Principal Warren said, lowering his voice. Perhaps we should continue this conversation privately. Marcus looked at Lily, who had finally taken another bite because she trusted him to stay calm. The insult was public, he said. The correction can begin where it happened. Principal Warren's jaw moved once. We need to maintain order. Then let us start with the order adults failed to maintain, Marcus said. While my daughter eats, you and I can talk about why children in this school are being punished for paperwork adults failed to handle. Principal Warren's expression changed so subtly that most people would have missed it, but Marcus did not. The principal's concern was no longer about Lily's lunch or Mrs. Harlan's words. It had shifted toward containment. How much had the children heard? How many phones were recording? How quickly could this be written down in a way that made the school look reasonable and the father look unstable? Mr. Reed, Principal Warren said, I understand emotions are high, but this is not the proper way to address a school concern. Marcus looked down at Lily. She had taken 3 small bites, each one slower than the last. Her fork held carefully, as if eating too quickly might make things worse. My daughter was not humiliated in the proper place either, he said. Mrs. Harlan drew in a controlled breath. This is what happens when parents come in angry before they understand the process. The words landed exactly where she meant them to land. Angry parent. Process. Disruption. Marcus could almost see the report forming in the air. He had read enough official language to know how kindness disappeared under careful phrasing. A child embarrassed in public became a cafeteria misunderstanding. A father asking for accountability became an escalated adult. A staff member's cold remark became a miscommunication. Lily's hand reached for his sleeve under the table. She tugged once, barely enough to move the fabric. Daddy. He turned to her immediately. Her eyes were wide, not because she feared him, but because she feared what might happen to him. That look cooled every sharp thing rising in his chest. Marcus had spent years teaching Lily that strength did not have to shout. Now she needed to see him prove it. He lowered his voice. I am all right, baby. Then he faced the adults again. Do not confuse calm with permission. Principal Warren's mouth tightened. No one is trying to confuse anything. But if this continues, I will have to document the incident. Please do, Marcus said. Document that my daughter's approved lunch was questioned in front of her classmates. Document that a staff member made a comment about my employment. Document that I asked for her dignity to be restored before she was removed from the room where she was embarrassed. Mrs. Harlan shifted her clipboard from one hand to the other. Approved lunch has not been established. Then establish it, Marcus said. Pull the file. Principal Warren glanced again toward Mr. Bell, who stood near the side door with his radio at his belt and both hands visible. Mr. Bell was a broad man with gentle eyes and the weary patience of someone who had broken up playground arguments without forgetting the children were still children. He had not stepped toward Marcus. He had not reached for his radio. He was watching the room, not hunting for a villain. Marcus respected that. Officer Bell, Principal Warren said, please remain close. Mr. Bell nodded once, but his gaze moved to Lily first. Yes, sir, he said quietly. I am right here. There was no threat in his voice, and somehow that made the principal's posture look even stiffer. Principal Warren turned back to Marcus. For the emotional safety of the students, I may need to note that your presence is creating distress. Marcus let the sentence sit between them. Lily's fingers tightened on his sleeve. Miss Alvarez closed her eyes briefly, as if she could already hear how unfair it sounded. My presence did not create her distress, Marcus said. Her shame was here before I walked through that door. Principal Warren took a breath. There may also be questions about whether this situation reflects concerns at home. That was the line. Softly spoken, professionally wrapped, dangerous all the same. Lily stopped eating. Marcus felt the room narrow around his daughter's fear. He placed his hand over hers, warm and steady, then looked at Principal Warren with a calm so complete it made the man hesitate. Be very careful what you put in writing today, Marcus said. Principal Warren froze for half a second, just long enough for Marcus to know the words had reached him. Not as a threat, but as recognition. This was not a father who feared paperwork. This was a father who understood exactly how records could ruin a family when careless people used them to hide the truth. Principal Warren did not answer at once. The words had taken something from him, not his authority exactly, but the easy assumption that Marcus would step backward once official language entered the room. He adjusted his tie, looked toward the students, then toward the cafeteria doors, still trying to arrange the moment into something he could manage. Mrs. Harlan stood beside the serving line with the clipboard against her ribs. Her eyes moved quickly, almost secretly, toward the small cafeteria terminal mounted near the register, then back down to the papers in her hand. It was only a glance, but Marcus saw the fear inside it. Not fear of him. Fear of what the record might say if someone finally looked closely. "We will review the account in the office," Principal Warren said. "That should have happened before my daughter was embarrassed," Marcus replied. "But yes, we will review it now." Mrs. Harlan took half a step backward. "I need to finish lunch service." Marcus looked at the clipboard. "Bring that with you." Her fingers tightened. "This is just my service sheet. My daughter's name was on it while she was being shamed in public," Marcus said. "That makes it part of the conversation." Principal Warren lifted one hand, still trying to sound reasonable. "Mr. Reed, you do not direct my staff." Marcus turned to him calmly. "Then you direct her. But that clipboard goes with us, and the terminal record gets pulled before anything is corrected, cleared, or refreshed." Something passed across the principal's face then, a brief flicker of confusion. Marcus had not spoken like a man guessing. He had spoken like a man who knew how records changed after complaints were made. Miss Alvarez stepped closer to Lily. "I can take her back to class while you handle this," she said gently. Lily immediately caught Marcus's sleeve. Her fingers were small, but the decision in them was not. "Daddy, please do not make me go." Marcus bent toward her. "Do you want to come with me?" She nodded. "I want to know why they said that." The sentence was soft, but it settled heavily over the adults. Marcus looked at Principal Warren. "She stays with me." "This is an adult matter," the principal said. Marcus shook his head once. It became her matter when adults made her stand in front of a room with a tray in her hands and shame in her throat. No one had a clean answer to that. Lily left the tray on the table. Marcus did not ask her to carry it. He placed one hand lightly between her shoulders, and together they walked toward the cafeteria doors. Miss Alvarez followed on Lily's other side. Mr. Bell came a few steps behind, quiet and watchful, his presence steady rather than threatening. Mrs. Harlan followed last, clipboard pressed flat to her chest, while Principal Warren led the way with the stiff posture of someone determined to look in control. The hallway outside the cafeteria was cooler and brighter, lined with student artwork, lost and found notices, and a bulletin board near the copier. Marcus stopped when he saw it. Red, yellow, and green dots were arranged beside student names in neat columns. Not numbers, not private codes. Names, children's names. Some marked green, some yellow, some red, all visible to any parent signing in, any student waiting for a late pass, any adult with a curious glance. Lily saw her name before he could turn her away. "Yellow. Pending." Her hand tightened around his. Miss Alvarez whispered, "Oh no," as if she had hoped it would somehow look different under another adult's eyes. Principal Warren turned back, impatient. "Is there another problem?" Marcus looked at the board, then at Lily wrapped in the blue sweater he had brought to keep her warm from the cold, not from humiliation. His voice stayed quiet, but the hallway seemed to bend around it. "Yes," he said, "and I think it is bigger than my daughter." Principal Warren followed Marcus's gaze to the board, and for one brief second, the hallway lost its ordinary school day feeling. The colorful student artwork, the lost and found bin, the smell of pencil shavings from the front office, all of it seemed to stand around that board like decoration around something no child should. "I've had to see. Those are internal notes," Principal Warren said. "Then they should be internal," Marcus replied. He did not raise his voice. He did not step closer. He only looked at the names, the red marks, the yellow marks, the green marks, and then at Lily's face as she read her own label in public. "We are here to review Lily's account," the principal said, already moving toward the office door. "Nothing else. We will start with Lily's account," Marcus said. "But I want her full meal account history, the verification receipt, the cafeteria terminal update record, and a copy of that clipboard before anyone changes a single mark." Mrs. Harlan's eyes flicked down to the papers in her hand. Mr. Bell saw it too. He did not say anything, but he shifted his stance just enough to remain beside the conference room door instead of drifting back toward the hallway. Miss Alvarez touched Lily's shoulder lightly. "I am right here, sweetheart." Lily leaned closer to Marcus. "Am I in trouble?" The question came out so quietly that Principal Warren looked away, as if not hearing it might make it less important. Marcus crouched in front of his daughter, blocking the board from her view with his body. "No, baby. You are not in trouble. You were never in trouble." Her eyes searched his. "Then why do they have my name up there?" Marcus took a breath. He wanted to answer honestly without teaching her to hate the people in front of her. Because sometimes adults forget what rules are for, he said. Rules are supposed to protect children. They are not supposed to make children feel ashamed. Lily nodded, though her hand still held his sleeve. Principal Warren opened the conference room door. We can discuss this inside. The office conference room was small, with a round table, for chairs, a stale pot of coffee on a side counter, and a printer visible through the open door behind the secretary's desk. Marcus remained standing. Lily stood beside him in the blue sweater. Miss Alvarez stayed near the wall. Mr. Bell remained at the doorway, respectful but present. Mrs. Harlan sat only after Principal Warren gave her a look, the clipboard flat on her lap. Print Lily Reed's meal. Account history for the current school year. The principal told the secretary. And the verification receipt, Marcus added. And the terminal update record from the cafeteria register. Principal Warren's jaw tightened. Let us not overcomplicate this. It became complicated when a child with a tray in her hands was told her father did not have a real job. The printer started humming. One page, then another, then another. The sound filled the room like a slow countdown. Lily watched the doorway each time the printer clicked, and Marcus wished he could take the waiting from her, the way he used to lift her over puddles when she was small. The secretary brought in the pages and placed them in front of Principal Warren. He read the first sheet. His eyes slowed. He turned to the second. His thumb pressed hard into the corner of the paper. Mrs. Harlan leaned forward. It should say pending. Principal Warren did not hand it to her. Marcus saw the word before anyone spoke it. Approved. 3 weeks earlier. Then, on the next page, another line. Cafeteria terminal updated the same day. Marcus let the silence do its work. He also saw other repeated account codes printed near the bottom, several marked pending after approval dates. Not names he would speak aloud in front of strangers, but enough to confirm the board in the hallway was not an isolated mistake. There appears to be a discrepancy, Principal Warren said. Marcus looked at him. Say it plainly. The principal swallowed. Lily's application was approved. Miss Alvarez closed her eyes for a moment. Mr. Bell looked down at the floor, his face heavy with understanding. Mrs. Harlan's fingers tightened around the clipboard until the paper bent. Then the system must have failed to show it at lunch service, she said. Miss Alvarez pointed gently toward the second page. The terminal updated the same day. No one moved. Marcus turned to Mrs. Harlan, not with triumph, but with the steady sorrow of a father who had just watched proof arrive too late to protect his child from shame. Someone saw my daughter was approved, he said, and still chose to treat her like she was not. For a few seconds, no one in the conference room seemed willing to breathe. Principal Warren stared at the printed record as if the word approved had betrayed him personally. Mrs. Harlan held the clipboard closer to her body. Her fingers curled over the metal clip until her knuckles turned pale. Lily stood beside Marcus in the blue sweater, looking from one adult face to another, trying to understand why a piece of paper had been able to say the truth more clearly than the people responsible for protecting her. Principal Warren cleared his throat. This appears to be a clerical error. Marcus turned his eyes toward him slowly. A clerical error did not comment on my job. The principal's mouth closed. A clerical error did not make my daughter stand in front of her classmates with food on a tray while adults discussed whether she deserved it. Mrs. Harlan looked down at the clipboard. I was following what I believed the system showed. Lily's voice came before Marcus could answer. It was small, but it reached every corner of the room. How did you mean it? Mrs. Harlan looked up. What? Lily swallowed. When you said maybe my daddy should have a real job. How did you mean it? No one moved. Miss Alvarez pressed one hand lightly against her own chest, as if holding back tears she did not want Lily to see. Mr. Bell lowered his eyes. Principal Warren turned toward the office door, suddenly interested in the hallway, but there was nowhere for that question to go except into the silence it created. Then the outer office door opened. Not loudly, just a clean click of the latch, followed by steady footsteps across the tile. The secretary stood at once. Principal Warren rose so quickly his chair scraped against the floor. Mrs. Harlan tightened both arms around the clipboard as if it were the last thing keeping the afternoon from breaking open. An older woman appeared in the doorway of the conference room, dressed in a gray pantsuit, silver hair neatly pinned, reading glasses hanging from a chain at her neck, a leather folder tucked beneath one arm. Mrs. Evelyn Carter did not enter like someone seeking permission. She entered like someone who had spent 40 years in schools and knew exactly when. Adults were hiding behind their own procedures. Her eyes went first to Lily. Not the papers. Not the principal. The child. "You must be Lily Reed," she said gently. Lily nodded. Mrs. Carter's face softened with a kind of sadness that did not embarrass her. "I am sorry your lunch period became a grown-up failure." Lily blinked, surprised by the plainness of it. Only then did Mrs. Carter look at Marcus. "Mr. Reed, I received your message." Principal Warren's face changed. "You two know each other?" Mrs. Carter placed her folder on the table and opened it. Marcus Reed is the independent child welfare auditor retained by the district after repeated complaints about public meal status practices at Roosevelt Elementary. The words moved through the room without needing volume. Mrs. Harlan's eyes widened. Miss Alvarez looked at Marcus, then at Lily, understanding at once how much he had chosen not to reveal. Principal Warren's hand remained on the back of his chair. "I was not informed he would be visiting today." Marcus looked at him calmly. That was the point. Mrs. Carter removed several pages from her folder. "We have complaints from 7 families. Students separated by meal status. Names visible in hallways. Approved applications treated as pending. Staff comments about income and employment." Mrs. Harlan sat down slowly, and something in her face changed. The certainty drained first. Then the defense. What remained looked painfully human. She looked at Lily, really looked at her, not as a yellow mark, not as a pending account, not as a small inconvenience at the lunch counter, but as a child in a blue sweater who had been forced to carry an adult's assumption in front of her classmates. Mrs. Carter turned to Principal Warren. "Effective immediately, Mrs. Harlan is removed from meal service pending review. The hallway chart comes down today. Every affected account will be audited before 5 o'clock. Every family will receive an apology in writing and in person." Marcus did not smile. "Start with my daughter," he said. Mrs. Harlan's voice was rough when it came. "Lily, I am sorry. You were approved. You deserved your lunch. I should have seen you as a child, not a category, and I should never have made you feel ashamed." Lily did not smile. She only nodded once and held her father's hand tighter. For the rest of that day, Lily stayed close to Marcus until Miss Alvarez walked her back to class. She did not skip. She did not smile much. But she did look back once at the cafeteria, then at the hallway where Mr. Bell was already removing the red, yellow, and green chart from the bulletin board. One thumbtack at a time, the names disappeared. Marcus stood with Mrs. Carter near the office door, the blue sweater folded around Lily's shoulders, watching the paper come down without satisfaction. Justice was not supposed to feel like winning when children had already been hurt. It was supposed to feel like repair beginning too late, but beginning anyway. Over the next few weeks, Roosevelt Elementary changed in ways that were quiet enough for some people to miss and important enough for children to feel. 12 student accounts were corrected after the district audit. Families received written apologies and phone calls, not from a machine, not from a form letter, but from people required to say exactly what had gone wrong. Principal Warren was placed under review and sent into training before returning to any student-facing decisions. Mrs. Harlan did not return to the lunch line while her conduct remained under review. Marcus never asked where she went. He did not trade rumors in the parking lot or stand outside the school hoping to hear she had been humiliated the way Lily had been. That was not the point. He had not walked into that cafeteria to break someone. He had walked in carrying a sweater. He had walked in because his daughter was cold and too gentle to ask for help. 3 weeks later, Marcus arrived early for Lily's class presentation, still in his work jacket, still with dust on his boots, still looking like any father trying not to be late. No one in the front office called him by a title. He preferred it that way. He signed in, took the visitor sticker, and paused at the place in the hallway where the old chart had hung. The bulletin board now held drawings of fall leaves, crooked pumpkins, and a paper turkey, with too many feathers. No names, no colors, no quiet labels for children to carry. From the cafeteria came the sound of trays, milk cartons, sneakers, and laughter. Marcus looked through the open doors and saw Lily at the table near the windows, wearing the blue sweater even though the room was warm. She was laughing with 2 friends, her shoulders loose, a carton of chocolate milk beside her tray. Above the entrance, a framed sign read, "Every child eats with dignity here." Lily saw him and waved him over. "Daddy, they really put it up," she said, pointing at the sign. Marcus nodded. They did. She looked down at her tray, then back at him. Was Mrs. Harlan a bad person? Marcus sat beside her on the edge of the bench, careful not to crowd her friends. She made a wrong choice, he said. And when a wrong choice hurts children, there has to be accountability. Lily thought about that. But you were not mean to her. No, Marcus said. Accountability does not need hatred. Lily's fingers touched the sleeve of the blue sweater. Were you angry? Marcus looked toward the hallway where the chart used to be, then back at his daughter. I was hurt. I was angry too. But anger is like fire, baby. You can use it to light the way, or you can let it burn down everything around you. Lily nodded slowly. You just turned on the lights. Marcus smiled then, a small, tired smile full of love. That is all I wanted. Later, after her class presentation, they walked out together through the same hallway, Lily's hand tucked into his, the blue sweater soft beneath his palm when he rested his hand on her shoulder. They passed the empty place where the chart had once hung, and Marcus understood that Lily would remember this day differently than he feared. Not as the day she was made small, but as the day she saw her father stand tall without raising his voice. And maybe that was the lesson dignity always leaves behind. It is not proven by how loudly a person fights, but by how firmly they stand when someone they love is made to feel small.